Hey everyone, I'm going to be going through a quick overview of Cloudera Machine Learning, or CML, and how it works on top of the rest of the CDP platform. So Cloudera Machine Learning makes it easy to bring data scientists to the data platform itself, and this affords a lot of improvements over the sorts of challenges that they run into on a day-to-day basis. The end-to-end machine learning process is a complicated one, where the data scientists largely want to focus on writing their machine learning code to do model training, and don't want to have to worry about, well, how do I access the data? How do I access the compute that's necessary for me to run my larger training workloads? And then most importantly, how do I take the results of what I've done and actually productionalize it? How do I take a model and put it into production so it can actually be used? How do I enable business users to be able to take advantage of the predictive modeling that I've done? So I'll show you how through Cloudera Machine Learning we make all of this possible and smoothen out that entire process. And so first we'll start here and on the list of machine learning workspaces that's shown inside of CDP. You can think of the individual workspaces as different areas that different teams of data scientists can be working that are separated from one another. And so in this particular example here, we can see that we have about 5 different workspaces spread out throughout, operating on top of different cloud providers and on top of different CDP environments. And so this makes it possible to make sure that different teams of data scientists have access to the data within the particular environments that they need to, but are then separated out from one another as well. And so it's super easy to provision a new workspace if you need to have yet another workspace carved out for other teams to be able to hop into. So when you click on Provision Workspace, it shows a quick wizard to choose these different options. And so I'll show you what this looks like when you want to say, create another workspace on top of an existing AWS CDP environment. When you do this, you get these settings for the compute that will be available to this particular workspace. You can see at the top here, I can choose the CPU instances, the types that I want to be able to use, as well as the GPU instances. And you can even entirely enable or disable GPUs as well. So for example, if I'm creating one development workspace for a large team of data scientists that are definitely going to need GPUs, even with those being more expensive instances in the cloud, I can enable GPUs for that particular workspace and then enable that team of data scientists to then use that one workspace. Separately, if I have other data scientists that are not doing as heavy of distributed learning and don't need the power of GPUs, I can create a different workspace and effectively disable the GPU instances for there. So as an admin, I can basically help to control my own cloud costs while enabling the data scientists with the resources that they need to be able to run their workloads. Okay, so from there, that's how you provision a new workspace. We'll go ahead and we'll just jump into one of these existing workspaces. And as we do so, I'm now going to be putting on my data scientist hat. I'm working with a team, my colleagues on the data science team here. Let's say that I'm part of a telecommunications company, and we're working on multiple projects with each other. So when I land inside of Cloudera Machine Learning, I immediately see the different projects that I'm working on. I can see I'm working on a customer churn project and some other ones that I've been working with my team on around financial modeling as well as marketing performance analysis. So this makes it easy for me to come in, see the different projects that I'm working on and say, okay, yes, I need to focus on this customer churn project because we have some work that we need to do there. So it makes it easy for me to jump in directly to that particular project. Some of the other things that I see when I land here is that it's letting me know, hey, I do have resources available across this workspace to be able to run workloads. I can open this up. I can see some of the additional details. I can see there's plenty of CPU, memory, and GPUs that are available if I need to be able to use them. So with that, we'll jump into this customer churn project. And a project is effectively a collaborative space that enables a team of data scientists to work on a single project altogether and be able to basically access the code that is written in the files that are made available inside of this project, and then all the other assets that are deployed from this project as well that we'll get into the details of from models and jobs and applications. But let's say that just right now, again, I'm a data scientist. We have this predictive model that will predict customer churn so that our call center reps can leverage it in an application. So that as they're talking with somebody on the phone, they can get a prediction of how likely it is for that particular customer to churn. And depending on that, they can adjust their talk track to that customer accordingly. So very helpful, very useful. But now we have new data that has come in and we need to retrain this particular model. And the way that I'm going to do this, and by and large, the main way that a data scientist runs workloads inside of CML is through what we call a session. And so in this session, if I start up a new session, it's effectively going to create an isolated container just for the purpose of my session that I am running. This means that there's a number of benefits from this. It means that I can basically get access to the exact amount of compute that I need. For example, I can look down here, I can say, hey, how many CPU, memory, and GPU do I need for this one? So I can make adjustments for this particular workload that I want to run. And from there, what is the sort of environment that I want to be using? What you're seeing here on the left-hand side is this is what we call our built-in workbench. So it's a fairly straightforward and simple IDE where you can write code, execute code, navigate through the files that are available in this particular project, etc. But we also have the ability for a data scientist to choose the editor that they want to be able to use. And we afford this choice to make it possible for the data scientists to be comfortable in the environment, in the coding environment that they're using as they're running their session, while under the hood, it's connected to the rest of the platform. So that means that there's still the direct access to the data that's in the environment, and also direct access, again, to the compute that is necessary for this. So for example, if I'm more comfortable using a Jupyter Notebook, I can start a session. And effectively what's going to happen here is it's going to create an instance of a Jupyter Notebook that's running on top of CML. And what, again, that affords to me is that if I'm used to using these notebooks locally on my laptop for other data scientist needs, it makes me very comfortable as I'm coming into CML. I'm not using the compute on my own laptop. I'm using the compute available on this CML cluster. But when I'm now coming into this particular model building notebook, again, I'm comfortable in this environment here because I know how to write code in a Jupyter Notebook. I know how to write the different cells in here to be able to run, to be able to load my data, do some basic feature engineering, and then actually go ahead and do model training as part of this. And so this is extremely powerful because effectively, a data scientist can use whatever IDE they're comfortable with. So we have data scientists that are that code in R instead of Python, and they like using RStudio as their front end development experience. And so we enable that to be possible. Others enjoy using tools such as PyCharm, etc. So we have a lot of flexibility to make it so that the data scientists can, again, focus just on the code that they're trying to write, and then be able to effectively run their workloads, again, while taking advantage of the connection to the data and access to the rest of the compute. One other detail as far as the sessions go is that, again, what I mentioned before is that this is now running as an isolated Kubernetes pod that I have direct access to. And because of that isolation, it lets me actually install different dependencies and different versions of these dependencies and libraries into my session without worrying about running into the requirements that other projects on the same workspace have. In other situations, if you're using a shared environment, then you might be often running into some of the dependencies that other projects require that might not align properly with the requirements for your particular project. So that clean isolation between the projects, especially inside of the session that you are running yourself, again, affords a lot of convenience and not having to worry about how things are running for others, but instead just me focusing on training my particular model in this notebook. Okay, so let's say that we have gone ahead and we have finished training this model. So when I stop this session, the resources that I had taken for it are now freed back up to the rest of the cluster. And so that means that, again, I'm basically only using compute on an as needed basis. And so I've now freed that back up. And let's say that now we are now ready to deploy our model into production. And so that's where the models functionality inside of CML comes into play. Models make it super easy for a data scientist to take the result of a model training that they've done, and instead of having to go to IT to ask, hey, how do I deploy this into production? How do I make this available as a REST endpoint for others to be able to hit and to be able to use? Instead of having to go through that, it only takes a couple of clicks inside of CML. If I click on new model here, then it would walk me through the few steps that I need to in order to actually deploy this model into production. Because that takes a few minutes, we'll just go ahead and take a look at this model that is already deployed, and I'll show you some of the details inside of it. So again, we've taken our trained customer churn model, and now it is being deployed through CML. And effectively what this does is, again, it basically wraps that model with a REST endpoint. And so the example code here basically shows the details of how you would be able to call this particular model in terms of the URL to be able to hit it, as well as example input that this model is going to be taking. I can even run a quick test of the model down here, for example. And again, this is predicting customer churn based off of customer characteristics. So I can see here the inputs are, whether or not they're using streaming TV, the monthly charges that they have, the total charges, how long they've been a customer, etc. And it takes all that information and effectively returns a prediction for how likely this particular customer is to churn. Now, when you deploy a model inside of CML, we also afford you a number of other things from a tracking and governance perspective. We're tracking the particular model that we have deployed right now. And so this is done through both a model ID as well as a unique CRN for this individual model that has been deployed. Now, on top of that, we're tracking the actual deployment as well as the build. And so the way to think about this, it's easy if I hop over to the deployments tab so you can really see what this means. So what this means is that you can see that I've deployed this particular model 4 different times. Okay, the very first time was based off of the original build of this model. So you can see that as build number 1. And so that deployment was done back on January 5th, and I can see that it was running from the 5th to the 14th. What happened from there is that, as you can see, is when I redeployed the model on the 15th, I actually also rebuilt it. And so this means that if I've made code changes to the model like we did earlier, and then I rebuilt this model and had it be redeployed, I can now see that the actual build has updated from version 1 to 2, as well as the fact that it is now has been deployed yet again. And so you can see now, since then, we've actually taken the exact same build and we've redeployed it a few times over the last few weeks. And so now we are running, again, build number 2 that was first built and deployed on the 15th, but we're now on deployment ID 207 because this is basically the 3rd time we have deployed the same model after making some adjustments over time. So that's some of the things that, again, from a tracking perspective, we are automatically doing within CML. We go even further on top of that as well. And so this is, again, the metadata that you see inside of CML. But because we're operating on the top of the rest of the CDP platform, we are actually able to track the full lineage of this particular model in Atlas. And I'll show you an example of that over here. Again, after that deployment was done, a record gets logged into Atlas as part of the SDX layer on the rest of the CDP platform. And the big thing that this does for us is it tracks the full lineage of exactly what went into this particular model. And so it starts all the way from the beginning. Where did the original data come from? In this particular example, there is an S3 bucket that the telco churn data was put into. We can see that there was a transformation done to this data, and then it was loaded into a table here. Now that's getting married with the actual code that we wrote inside of our customer churn project as part of the model training action. So again, it's combining the data as well as the code, and the model training action has then turned into the particular model that then goes through its full build and deployment process. So this is extremely powerful because now I can see, again, for governance purposes, what exactly went into the particular model that is currently deployed. I can make sure that the proper transformations were done on the data. If there is particular data that needs to be excluded because of compliance reasons, I can sort of prove that that was done properly even before the model training was done. So this is, again, extremely powerful and something that because CML is operating on the top of the rest of the data platform, we're effectively able to afford this with very, very little effort on the side of the data scientist who's trying to then deploy this particular model. Okay, so we have trained a model. We have deployed that model into production. But how do we now enable a business user, one of those call center reps, to be able to actually take advantage of this particular model? We obviously can't hand them a REST endpoint and expect them to be able to hit it and use that every single time that they have a customer on the phone. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to use the applications feature inside of CML. And applications enable data scientists to use lightweight web application frameworks such as Flask or Shiny and easily create an interactive application that, again, is served in a production-ready way on top of the rest of the CML platform. And so an example of what this application could look like in this particular example is this here. And so what we're showing here is I'm a call center rep and I've logged into this application and I can basically see the queue of customers that I have waiting for me on the phone. And for each of the customers that are waiting for me, I can see the probability that each of these customers is to churn, again, based off of their characteristics as a customer, which are all the other columns that are here. So I can see, okay, the next person I'm about to talk to has almost a 71% chance of churning. And why is that? This particular application is actually highlighting for me a couple of reasons why. It looks like they've only been a customer for 7 months, so they haven't had that long of a tenure. And in addition, it looks like their contract is only a month-to-month contract. If you compare that to some of the other examples down below, you can see that this customer at the bottom that has only a 2% chance of churn, they've been a customer for 72 months and they have a 2-year contract that's in place. And so this is giving me some rationale. So I, as a call center rep, can actually trust this probability of churn a little bit more. And again, now I can actually change the way that I am talking to this particular customer based off of this. So again, this is just one example of a lightweight web application that can be built on top of CML. But really, the sky's the limit here in terms of how interactive you can make these applications. But the most important thing is you can basically marry up, again, the data from the data lake itself with the predictive model that we have deployed and turn it into a fully interactive experience. And again, all of this is possible from the same platform. All this can be done by data scientists and their colleagues on the CML platform. And again, it's all tracked together as part of these individual projects. It makes it super easy to collaborate across the entire team.